So, hi everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world right now. My name is Keegan Cook. I'm part of the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies here at the GSB. And first of all, I want to say congratulations on being admitted to the GSB. I'm sure I'm not the only one to say that this is a remarkable achievement and you're all incredible people. And I really look forward to getting to know you once you're on campus. I'm going to spend a little time today going over some information about the entrepreneurial resources here at Stanford. But I'm hoping that this will be more casual and that we will have plenty of time for Q&A to answer any questions you have. If you have any pressing questions while I'm talking, feel free to interrupt me or put questions in the chat. And my colleagues, Nancy and Summer, can help me, help interrupt me as well if I'm starting to ramble and I'm not answering the questions. All right. So if there's one message I want you to walk away with from this meeting is that entrepreneurship is in the water here at Stanford, and especially here at the GSB. And so you probably have already gotten this sense before, but I'll just share some information to kind of shed some light on that. So about 25 to 30% of the alums of the GSB have started one company, at least one company. About 40% of those have founded multiple companies and are serial entrepreneurs, and about 30% get fundraising from the VC industry here. And as you can imagine, a lot of the alums from the GSB end up as VCs too. Entrepreneurship is very much recognized and welcomed by our faculty and our researchers here at Stanford. This is a cultural norm here, and that may be a differentiating point between the GSB and other schools. And of course, the location we are in the heart of Silicon Valley, and investors come to campus all the time. Entrepreneurs go into the Silicon Valley and meet with investors all the time. And so just being in this ecosystem, it's in the water. This is Meg Key. She is the founder of a company called A Day. She's showing off her new line of comfortable workwear for women. And she's off to the races. She's running this company now. And the message here is that alums out of the GSB found companies big and small. Some of the more well-known names you may have heard of recently are DoorDash. Some of you may have gotten some food from DoorDash recently. You may have seen them on Shark Tank in the last couple of weeks as well. The Align Technologies, the creators of Invisalign, Marketo, a marketing software, and SoFi, for example. And these really run the gamut of industry and focus on impact and software versus hardware. So about 15 to 19% of students graduating from the GSB are actively working on ventures as they graduate. And this is a differentiating point from a lot of other schools. This is quite high. And you will find write-ups and Poets and Quants and other news outlets about the high levels of VC-funded companies coming out of the GSB. And when you come to Stanford, you will notice that the interest level in your fellow cohort is very high. So 65 to 75% of the incoming class expresses a high interest in learning about entrepreneurship. Here you can see Robin showing off her Smitten ice cream to her fellow classmates and faculty members. And a lot of these students come to the GSB already having some entrepreneurial experience themselves, either working in a startup or founding. And they bring those really interesting experiences into the classroom. When you're at the GSB, for the last couple of years, 100% of the class has taken at least one entrepreneurial class while they're here. And the average is students take about 7 to 8 entrepreneurial classes. So the interest is very high. And when we talk about entrepreneurship, we don't want you to just think about a form of entrepreneurship where you found a company. There's other forms of entrepreneurship that we are very welcoming and supportive of here at the GSB. So the first example is the founder route, where you're founding a company from scratch, maybe becoming the CEO, like Elise Smith here, who founded Praxis Labs. She uses VR technology to train large corporations on diversity and inclusion. But there's other forms of entrepreneurship where you're starting as a very early stage employee, maybe the COO or head of product, like Selena here. There's another model of entrepreneurship that we call search funds. This is a really interesting model where you get financial support for some period of time for you to go find an existing company to acquire and become the CEO of. And Stanford is recognized as kind of a pioneer of this model, and it's becoming very popular with very interesting rates of return. If you're interested in forming a social enterprise or an impact-focused enterprise, whether it be nonprofit or for-profit, we have special programming and people dedicated to support those types of endeavors, whether it be for social impact or environmental impact. And we have formed a tight collaboration between the GSB and the New School of Sustainability to specifically support entrepreneurs who want to work in the sustainability space. And then there's also, being intrapreneurial and encouraging and fostering innovation within large corporations. And the pedagogy and the curriculum you'll be exposed to here helps you with that career path as well. So to create this ecosystem, there's a lot of resources available to you. There's over 50 elective courses on entrepreneurship and innovation that you can take advantage of. There's so many courses that we have to group them into buckets. So there's courses around startup fundamentals to kind of get you exposed to the decision-making processes of an entrepreneur. There's classes called experiential entrepreneurship classes, and I'll touch on that in the next slide. But these are classes where you're actually learning by doing. So you're actually evaluating real venture ideas during your time in a class and learning entrepreneurship that way. There's classes on scaling, on specific functions of entrepreneurship and specific industries, and of course, social and environmental entrepreneurship courses as well. And so with all these courses, you can really design your own unique pathway to make sure you get the learning outcomes that you want. I'll touch on these experiential courses. So the GSB has 4 itself, but GSB students have access to experiential courses outside of the GSB and across the campus. And in total, there's about 12. And they all are rigorous. They're all highly rated. They're all very intense. But students really gain a lot of great experience in these courses as they go through the innovation process by evaluating their own venture ideas. And some of you may have heard of lean startup methodologies or design thinking methodologies. Those are pervasive throughout all of these classes. And so you'll see similar themes between these classes, but each of them has their own unique lens. So there's classes on climate tech in particular. There's classes on biomedical devices in particular. There's classes on creating social enterprises in particular. So lots of options. I'll just mention that a model that the GSB really loves is in all of these classes, the GSB really encourages a teaching team that involves a tenure line faculty member who does research along with a practitioner. So a serial entrepreneur or an investor out in the real world. This is a picture of our startup garage class where Stefanos is our faculty who does research and operations and entrepreneurship. And behind him is a teaching team full of serial entrepreneurs and investors. And it's through that combination that you get some really powerful and nuanced curriculum where the faculty member will say, here's the trends that we're seeing in research and my surveys. And then the practitioners will say, this is how it manifests in the real world and how I'm interacting with entrepreneurs on a day-to-day basis. Outside of the classroom setting, we have a lot of co-curricular programming. One I'll mention now is the Stanford Venture Studio. So this is not a class, but it's a supplement to classes where in a class setting, you have to follow week by week curriculum and be exposed to certain things week by week. In Venture Studio, there's no set programming that you have to take part in. You tell us where you are in your process, and we have resources that you can tap into to support you at that moment. So this could be, hey, I'm thinking about incorporating what's the difference between this option and this option, and we'll connect you with some legal guidance. It could be, hey, I'm developing this prototype and I'm getting some really weird feedback that I don't know how to interpret. We can set you up with a particular expert on that. There's deals and discounts to different things, and expert office hours come in all the time, and we do workshops and ask me anything sessions with serial entrepreneurs. And so this is more of a resource hub that you can take advantage of throughout your entire process. In addition to a community. So these are kind of the overview of the benefits of the Venture Studio. And one of the biggest benefits is this community of over 2,500 people, both current students and alums, who you can tap into for very particular things. So I've seen posts to the community of, hey, does anybody have a connection to this buyer within Best Buy? And someone will respond saying, oh yeah, I can do a warm intro for you. Or, hey, I need to talk to a lawyer in the sports IP space. And the community will be there to support you and make connections. Here's a fun picture of folks working in the Venture Studio. A lot of students focus on software innovations, as you can imagine. All the pictures I'm showing you, I think, are hardware innovations because those make much prettier pictures. Software innovations don't really make good pictures. So this team, Kinema, was working on a virtual fitness platform. This team was making a magnetic bike pedal. Team formation. So one of the biggest assets that you would gain here at the GSB is the connection to your fellow classmates, because you're all very impressive people, and building up your network and finding potential co-founders for your current venture or future venture is one of the best things you can do here at Stanford. And we have a lot of resources available to help you form those teams. There's different websites and different mixers that we run. So this is just a picture of one of the platforms we use called the Team Formation Hub. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about summer opportunities. So these are opportunities for you to take advantage of between your first year and your second year in the MBA program. And there's lots of options. So we have 3 programs that we call summer entrepreneurial immersions, where you are provided with a stipend and workshops and coaching for you to evaluate your own venture idea over the summer. And so it's a pretty sweet deal for you to get paid to work on your own venture. We don't take any equity, there's no strings attached. We just want to support your learning journey over the summer, and there's financial support for you to do that. If you want to test your fit in working in an early stage startup, there's a program called the Entrepreneurial Summer Internship Program, where if you find a company, an early stage startup that you want to work in, but they can't afford to pay you a healthy salary, Stanford will help supplement your salary for the summer so that you can have that opportunity to work in that early stage startup. If you want to test your fit with a little bit later stage growth stage company, there's always a plethora of traditional internship opportunities available. There's particular internship opportunities available through our seed office, who work with growing startups in emerging markets. And so that's a really interesting opportunity. We have special programming dedicated for allowing students to establish their fit with a social impact innovative firm, either small or large. And that's run by the CSI. And then I wanted to mention that we also have a program where upon graduation, if you are launching an impact-focused venture, whether it be social impact or environmental impact, there's a special fellowship opportunity available for that too, to give you a little bit more runway that you might need to establish your business and get more fundraising later on. Okay, so the CES team is comprised of 15 very talented and very interesting and helpful people. These pictured here are just 4 who do a lot of student engagements, but we have a robust team depending on your interests. And so we are here to support you, and we love chatting with students. So when you're here, reach out to us, get to know us. I think the best quote I've heard from students is the CES team is surprisingly helpful. People are often, after they chat with us, they're surprised how helpful we are. I don't know if that's a compliment or a dig, I'm not sure. There's lots of clubs. So the Entrepreneurship Club is a big one, Social Innovation Club, VC Club, Cardinal Ventures is more of an accelerator program campus-wide. The GSB and the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies is just one of many organizations on campus supporting entrepreneurs. And so you, at this website, send.stanford.edu, lists all the different organizations across the campus that focus on entrepreneurship. And if you have a particular industry area or a particular interest, there's usually a group dedicated to supporting you and your interests. So if you're interested in education and entrepreneurship, there's an education accelerator. If you're interested in biomedical devices or healthcare, there's particular entrepreneurial centers just for that. And so the GSB collaborates with these centers very frequently. Something you can take advantage of now before you're even here is the engineering school puts on a webinar series called the Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders program. And they bring in really top-notch founders and investors to talk about different issues, whether their own experience or things they're seeing in the field. And these talks are very impressive. They're usually very real about the highs and the lows of entrepreneurship. And I'll end with that. I wanted to leave enough time for questions, so we'll open it up. What can I be helpful with? Go ahead, Andrew.
Hello, thank you for putting on this amazing, informative event. So my question is, I'm an incoming student and I have been working for about 3 years in the tech industry, and I want to do something social impact related before enrolling in school. I understand that there's amazing programs like GMIX and even these entrepreneurial fellowships that you highlighted for the between year 1 and 2. I'm just curious, have any past students also felt like, oh, they've been working for a few years and they want to try doing something entrepreneurial or social entrepreneurial in the summer before, and then gain that perspective and focus the curriculum accordingly?
It's a great question. I'll just chime in to say it is very common for students to test entrepreneurship in a new way while they're here. So that's very much normal. In terms of the summer before coming here, I'm not sure about the resources available. You can, before you get your student ID, you wouldn't be able to access a lot of the preset programming that we have. But if you're interested in social impact in particular, I would encourage you to reach out to the folks at CSI, and they might have some interesting ideas on what you might be able to do during the summer before getting here. They might have exposure to certain external internship opportunities that we don't run, but they may be aware of.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, Salome, is it? Please tell me if I mispronounced.
Thank you, Salome. Thank you, Salome. All good, all good. Thank you so much. First, thank you for organizing this event. I was typing the question, realized I would much better ask it this way. So this presentation was great, and there's so many resources and opportunities. The one question I have is like, how do you pick? Because you can't do all at once, and you can't do all the classes at once. So how you've seen students tackle and choose the resources and pick the right ones to craft their journey at Stanford and beyond?
It's such a great question. Every year we ask students, what are the biggest challenges you've had here as an entrepreneurial student at the GSB? The number 2 pain point that the GSBers have is there are so many resources and it takes time to navigate them. The best advice I can give you is talk to CES, talk to your MBA program team, and what we'll do is we'll focus on your learning goals, and we'll help you choose the different classes to meet your learning goals. There are lots of different ways to meet your learning goals, and so other factors come into play, like this is how many credits I'm taking this quarter, and other factors in this decision-making process. But the best advice I can give is just chat with us. Chat with CES and chat with your MBA advisor, and we'll help you. Okay, I see a question in the chat. Mark says, thanks for the event. I've heard something called StartX and StartX Med. Any chance you could elaborate a little bit more about this program? I'm especially wondering about its relationship to GSB and Stanford. Great question. So StartX is its own separate nonprofit organization, but historically it's been very much tied to Stanford in a couple different ways. One is they used to only accept Stanford affiliates into their program. I think they've become a little bit more flexible, so they do have some fringe cases if you're a really exceptional founder. But historically, it's always been a Stanford-based accelerator. There used to be a fund called the Stanford StartX Fund, where Stanford University used to fund some of the companies coming out of StartX. But StartX is its own nonprofit, its own entity. It's a fantastic program. They don't take any equity. They give you tons of resources. I went through the program in 2014, and it was life-changing for me. The acceptance rate is very low, and so typically you have to apply many times to get in. I think the average application, it's like you have to apply 2.5 times before you're admitted. But every time you apply, you get really good feedback. And so I encourage you to keep in touch with them and apply. And if you don't get in the first time, you'll get some great feedback, apply again, apply a third time, and eventually you'll get in. Mark, let me know if you have any follow-up questions on that. But StartX Med, they have a particular arm to support medical devices and health tech innovations. But it's a fantastic program. I would say one of their strengths is fundraising. So if you're in the path they have different programming, but one of their strengths is fundraising. So if you're like, let's say you've validated some hypotheses around your solution and your business model, and you're starting to fundraise, StartX has got a whole bunch of programs dedicated to that. Okay, great. Okay, great. Thanks, Nancy, for that about GMix. Great. All right, Michael, looks like you have a question.
Hey, Keegan, thanks for putting the event on. I'd love to hear about how a current GSB alumni who is working on a startup that kind of started during their time at GSB, what the different touch points were with specific classes or resources and how it kind of propelled them on their journey.
Yeah, thanks for your question. I'm gonna give you a composite character. So let's see, who should I make up? I'll give you an example of, it's a real example of a student who was focused on a climate hardware innovation. And so this is a very specific example, but I want to give the impression that no matter what industry you're in or what you're doing, there's specific pathways that you can take. So in this case, it was a guy named Ted. And Ted came to Stanford with a particular interest in energy and climate. Didn't know what he was going to do or work on, but he took advantage of something called Explore Energy. It's a week-long session of workshops and mixers just focused on energy. He got really pumped, started building his network. He came across through different classes an interesting problem space and an interesting innovation in hydrogen storage. And so he started deep diving into that. And he took advantage of specific classes, like there's an experiential course called Stanford Climate Ventures. And there's other classes as well, where he was able to evaluate the viability of his business model in the class and learn along the way. I think he also took advantage of this co-curricular activity called Venture Studio. He probably took advantage of one of the summer immersion programs. If not, then this composite character of Ted should have. So that would give him the whole summer of evaluating. And then upon graduation, he applied for this Stanford Impact Founder program and was awarded $110,000 to keep on working on his venture. That gave him a little bit more runway to de-risk his tech. His tech is this hydrogen storage tank that is put on the on semi-trucks. And so the $110,000 gave him a little bit more runway to de-risk the tech and start getting a little bit more funding. And so he applied to this program called the Breakthrough Energy Ventures. This is its own investment firm, I think co-sponsored by Bill Gates. And he won the Breakthrough Energy Ventures prize, which is about $4 million. And so now he's off to the races with his company called Vern. We are wishing him the best, and it looks like he's going to do great things. So that's an example of a very specific use case where he came in, didn't know what he was working on, but he was interested in the climate space, and then exited with a company and kind of launching pad. So depending on what you're interested in, your path might look a little different, but there is a pathway for you.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Right. Sure. Okay, I've got a question here from Joseph. I have heard great things about the biodesign program in connection with the medical school. How have students leveraged these classes to launch viable startups? And is it more of an educational only experience? Great question. I don't know about the rates of how many of the biodesign teams actually launch their ventures. typically for these experiential courses, biodesign is one of them. Typically, it's about 30% to 50% of the teams who go through these courses actually end up launching a venture. And that doesn't mean they launched the venture that they were specifying in the class. Pivoting is all part of the process, and it is very likely that they pivoted several times after the class. But these classes, they train you around these innovation processes so that you're comfortable in pivoting and that you're pivoting for the right reasons. So to answer your question, biodesign is also one of these really highly rated experiential courses. They have a unique model where they actually seed particular technology innovations or particular problems for you to work on in the beginning. So they'll say, hey, team A, we've connected you based on your interests with this very particular problem of patient compliance with medications. And your task for the quarter is to investigate this problem. If you find out in like week 2 that there's no interesting there, then they allow you to pivot to something else. But they at least give you a starting point. And they have external partners that help you so you get access to patients and access to different technologies. Let me know if that answered your question, Joseph. So this educational only component, we definitely focus on education so that you can use the processes and use the learning, not only on this current venture, but future ventures and whatever your career holds. But it is a very common outcome that students actually launch after the class. All right, looks like I got a question from Mohammed. Thanks for putting on the event. Really helpful. I'm quite interested in pursuing the Public Management and Social Innovation Certificate. Could you share any information on that? Like how many students take it up? How much would the impact the ability to take a broader array of courses? Great question. I'm not going to be the best person to answer that. The CSI would give you a very specific, nuanced answer. I'll just say that what we've done is different classes will apply for in the pursuit of these certificates. You have to get certain credits in certain areas. And so what we've done, let's say in our Startup Garage class, is that by taking Startup Garage and doing some slightly different activities during your class, you will be able to apply that class as a credit towards the certificate. And so I'll give a very brief example where in the class of fall quarter of Startup Garage, there's a decision point where either you fill out a certain type of business model canvas or an impact-focused business model canvas. And so if you want the course of Startup Garage to apply to the certificate, you would choose to fill out the impact version of the business model canvas. And I believe that's the way they've done it with other classes as well, so that you can still have a lot of flexibility in what you're doing and still get the credit that you need for the certificate. So that was kind of a half response. To get the full answer, you'll want to ask CSI. But my impression is that you still get a lot of flexibility in the courses you take. Okay, great. Oh, thanks, Nancy. Okay, Nancy knows the story. Okay, great. Perfect. Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, go ahead, Salome.
I have another one. So the question I have is, we were at this regional event for admitted students, and we talked about different entrepreneurship courses. And Startup Garage definitely popped up and a few more. And what Alonso shared is that there are going to be like they're application based, which means that you'll have to fill out the application. And I've heard people also recommend that we spend some time before starting MBA actually crafting this idea, because when we get to start the school, it's not going to be there won't be any time to actually flesh it out. So the question I have, do you have any advice on how to approach that application closer to the date when it actually comes out, but also in preparation for this course? Is there anything in specific that we should aim for when we're kind of trying to pitch this idea that we have or a company that we have to the team at Startup Garage?
It's a great question. So just for everybody's sake, so Startup Garage is a 2-quarter course, starts in the fall, goes to the winter. You don't have to take both quarters, it's optional. You can't take Startup Garage fall in your first year. You can take Startup Garage winter your first year, but those are typically, it's pretty rare to do that. Typically, those are students who have already started working on a venture, and they go into the winter already having done some prototyping and some business de-risking, and then they'll join the winter. So to answer your question, Salome, it depends on your interests. One way to think about it is that if the average number of pivots per team before launching, if the average is something like 2.5 per quarter, then there may be some work that you can do either before Stanford or through the Venture Studio program or other courses during the fall quarter for you to already start investigating an idea, and maybe you knock out some pivots. And then you would be in a position to apply to the winter quarter of Startup Garage in your first year. We don't want any students to put too much pressure on themselves, because it's a much more common path for you to in your first year, get a lay of the land of entrepreneurial activity around campus, get some entrepreneurial perspectives by taking one of these more fundamental courses, and then taking Startup Garage in your second year, both fall and winter. Some students will start their entrepreneurial journey in the summer between their MBA1 and MBA2 by taking one of these immersion programs. So I don't know if that answered your question, but there's lots of options. If you want to, for students who really want to start evaluating venture ideas in the fall, the best way to do that is to take advantage of the Venture Studio programming and the guidance from the CES team and the experts that we bring in.
Thank you. Thank you. Really helpful.
Okay, sure.
Hey, Keegan and everyone, this is Nancy. Just jumping in to add to what you were talking about, Keegan. And yes, if you're trying to like maybe put together content language that you can be thinking about the summer ahead of time, so when that application opens, you know, you can be more of a plug and play. I would encourage you might be able to actually reach out to Glenn Kramer. He teaches an incredible course called Winning Writing. And he might have some tips for you on how do you start crafting your message and telling your story before you could get here and actually take his course. I did throw in a quick link to one of his podcast episodes that we have here about think fast, think smart. But yeah, I think he would actually be a good person to help you think about, crafting and telling your story, perhaps before you actually matriculate.
And thanks very much, Nancy. Glenn Kramer is well respected at the GSB. He's even become a verb. So if your writing is a certain style and he wants you to do in a different style, you will Kramanize it. Really recommend looking into his classes. And Salome, just to tag on your question earlier, for the application process for Startup Garage in particular, we have a workbook that asks for very specific things, and the best way to put your information into that workbook is just to consult the CES team along the way. We use a language that is very much embedded in design thinking and lean startup. All right, any other questions? Go ahead. Is it Yasin?
Yes, hi, Mr. Cook. Thank you very much for hosting this session. One of the hypotheses that I would like to test during my MBA journey is whether, to find out whether venture capital is the right path for me. What is the best way or like a good way to test this hypothesis?
Yeah, there's lots of different courses, and you'll through the E-Club, you'll get exposure to different VCs. CES brings in VCs all the time, and you can build your network that way. But there are specific classes on the perspective of investors. Nancy and Summer, let me know if you know the name of the class I'm thinking of. It's taught by Ilya, and Ilya's last name starts with an S, but I can't remember what it was. But
Yeah, Ilya Strubilov.
yeah.
Let me go back. Let me look at the title of his class.
Great.
I
Okay, great. But so Ilya Strubilov, he, alongside a VC practitioner, and they co-teach this class, and they give the perspective of what it's like to be an investor, both an angel and a VC. And so what you do in that class is you practice being an investor. So you take in a bunch of pitches or one-page summaries. You as a class decide on what investment you're going to make. Then the faculty will consult on, like, this is the averaging, like this is what most people choose. This is what the outcome was actually, and you get to practice what it's like to be an investor that way. Ilya's research is really interesting because what he looks at is he's got connections with all these investors around the world. And what he does is he studies their practices and their decision-making processes and also their outcomes. And so he'll be able to apply that type of research lens to say, for this type of scenario, if you were to use this type of decision-making process or this type of investment thesis, you would go with this conclusion, versus if you were to use this other decision-making process, you'd go with this conclusion. So it really is a unique lens into what it's like to be an investor. And then a lot of students will become an associate or an intern at an investment firm over the summer to kind of get that real world exposure as well. Did that answer your question, Yasin?
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure. What else? Go ahead, Andrew.
So I'm really happy Nancy put this course in the chat because I was just even thinking recently about how communication is such a critical part of just any idea, right? And that's a great one for written communication. I was curious, do you feel like the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies offers any coursework on verbal communication or storytelling, like that type of thing? Or is that more housed in GSB coursework? Or is that part of the leadership curriculum, like lead labs?
Yes, great question. And Summer and Nancy chime in if I'm forgetting anything. I'll just cite two examples. So as a GSB student, you get access to communication coaches. And those coaches go beyond just like at a venture pitching format. So they can go into, a job interview format or a presentation format or whatever type of communication coaching you'd like. You have access to that. In terms of, and there's also classes on communication. So there's another professor named Matt Abrams. And so he gives workshops and had classes on how to handle Q&A during an investor pitch setting. And so he does communication not only more broadly, but for entrepreneurs in particular. And then the last thing I'll mention is if you're part of the Venture Studio community, we do have a pitch coach come in once in a while, and you get to sign up for, oh, thanks, Nancy. You get to sign up for one-on-one coaching with her, where you will actually have your slide deck, your pitch, and you'll pitch, and then she will not only comment on your communication style and the verbal communication, but also the content that you're trying to display in your slides.
That's good to know. Yeah, because one of the, in talking to like my specific management at Microsoft, they said that what you exude, how you exude as a leader helps build confidence of your team that you're leading. And so there's these, even the nonverbal cues, and I love the comment about written communication. But what I was even thinking is those aspects of nonverbal communication that are not even you actually talking, it's just the way you carry yourself. So I wanted to figure out how to at least even get an assessment on that. And maybe
yeah, absolutely. Matt Abrams, he really deep dives into this. And so so one of the things he coaches the students on is when you're giving an investor pitch, if you're the person speaking, then your other teammates should be looking at you as if you're the most interesting person in the world at that moment. And the reason why he provides that advice is because he sees all these different pitches from different teams, and it is those nonverbal cues are very indicative about the team dynamic. So if the other team members are doing their own thing, or not paying attention to the leader who's speaking at that moment, or vice versa, when the CEO then lets the head of product speak and he or she is not paying attention, all of those really matter. And so Matt Abrams will give coaching and workshops on that in particular. Oh, that's great, Nancy. I didn't know that about Shawan.
I know, it was really cool. I ran into Shawan on campus about a week or so ago, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, yeah, I'm actually teaching with Matt this quarter. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Great. I'll just say one more thing about Matt Abrams. One of the reasons why he's so credible in this particular capacity of helping entrepreneurial teams pitch is because what he does in addition to teaching is he consults big investment firms and consults the startups that they've already invested in to help their startups get more money. And so while he teaches students in the early stages here, he also does consulting out in the real world, where he's teaching entrepreneurs, the fine techniques in raising more money. What other questions do people have?
Speaking of Matt, he does a podcast called Think Smart, Think Fast. And I just put the link, or Think Fast, yes, anyway.
Yep.
Think Fast, Talk Smart.
Yep.
I put the link in here. So this is something that you can start engaging with. To Keegan's point, and communications, this is something that anyone in the general public can get involved in and take a look at. So stuff to do no matter where you choose to go to business school.
Yeah, great. What else? All right. Well, happy to stick around if anybody wants to stick around. But other than that, thanks so much for all your great questions. Congratulations again. Let us know if CES can be helpful to you. And if we can't be helpful to you, we'll direct you to other people who can be helpful. And have a wonderful rest of the summer. Well, what month is this? I almost wanted to say it's summer already. No, have a good spring and summer, and hope to see you in the fall.